All right. Well, I do not want to take up any more of your time. So thank you for joining today. I am Danielle Snelson, and my colleague Jen is on the line too. You see her in the window. Hey, Jen, how are you? So she'll be helping me out a little bit today. Oh no, I've got some search things going on. Always when you start a webinar that your computer likes to be funny. So today is all about team retreats. Let me know in the chat, how many of you generally host retreats? Like, is this something you do all the time? And so you're like, oh, I'm looking for some new ideas. Or let me know in the chat if this is your first time and you're like, I don't even know where to start. Let me know where you're at today. All right. Looks like I'm going to have some slow time. There we go. We've done 2 yearly for the past 2 years, weekly retreat with yourself. Does that count? I guess. All right. Well, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Danielle Snelson, and I am the CEO of Sona Events. And my company's been planning events and retreats since 2007. So I'm bringing today you all today my experience over the last 15 years. So after planning all of these retreats and doing this for so long, I decided that I actually wanted to take a little bit of a step back in planning for people and teach organizations, companies, how to do this for themselves way more efficiently than perhaps you're currently doing. Maybe you're looking for some better strategies to make things make more sense as you're planning team retreats. So I help teams create better systems for managing team travel and events. A really big factor for me is teaching them how to do this more efficiently, but also creating more of an effective strategy. Because as we all know, if you've done this before, it's really time consuming. So my goal is to teach you everything that I know so that this process becomes so much easier for you. Now, what we do these days, what Sona Events does these days, is our team helps source amazing destinations and locations for your team retreats, meetups, offsites, anything that you're doing where you're bringing the team together. And we do that for free. So that's what we do. So in addition to finding you guys great places to host those team retreats, I also provide a lot of free education around how to create more efficient processes and strategies around the event planning side of things, because that's what I've been doing for 15 years. So that is who I am. And that's a little bit of a nugget about what Sona Events does. So thank you for being here and I appreciate it. Now, before we get started, I have a lot of content. So one, I apologize because I'm probably going to talk fast because I don't want to take more than an hour every time. So we've got like 50 minutes to go at this point. So I do talk fast. Please take notes, whether that's handwritten notes or on your computer, whatever works best for you. Now, if you have questions at all during the flow of the workshop, I will take questions in the middle. Like if I'm talking about a certain topic and you're like, I have questions about that, I will answer those questions. But I'm also going to save the last 10, 15 minutes for additional questions. So if I don't get to your question when you ask it, just save that question till the end and I will be sure to answer all of your questions. So I don't want you to feel left out. All right. So we're going to pop back in the chat again. So tell me in the chat, what is your biggest frustration when you're planning team retreats? Now, if you're not planning anything right now or you've never done in the past, maybe what are some fears around getting that process started? Where do you feel like maybe some like stickiness is happening? Do you feel like that's in the planning process? Do you feel like it's in communication? Let me know in the chat what are you most frustrated with when it comes to planning team retreats? Now, we work with people across the entire like gamut of answers and like reasons of things that are frustrating. Sometimes that includes just getting the leadership team to buy in or participate or help with budgeting. Sometimes that's the sticky part. If you have anything that you want to add, pop that into the chat so I could see that. And so we can talk about what it is you feel like your biggest frustration is when planning a team retreat. Now, sometimes the biggest frustration is budget and money and kind of having to be resourceful and creative on a really low budget. That is a big frustration. Some other frustrations is like just getting travel booked. Like, how do you do that? So sometimes that's a really a frustrating point. Dan says, answering the why do a retreat now versus later and spend so much money now? Yes, that is a great question. And sometimes, again, your leadership team might be going, oh, it's not a priority right now. And so sometimes those are the types of things that you're wrestling with. So at any point, pop that frustration into the chat. Let me know. Now, when you're planning your team retreat, what results would you most like to see when your team comes together? What are you trying to accomplish? Think about your team status right now. What's going on in your team that you're like, man, if we could just meet, we could solve X. What does that look like for you and your organization right now? Go ahead and pop that in the chat. We are going to be covering a lot of these answers to some of the frustrations and the results you're looking for. Now, I just want to be real for a minute. Team retreats are sometimes really hard to capture what the ROI is. It's like, what does that even mean? What are we trying to track? Jenny, you say your goal would be to connection as whole people, inside and outside. Yes. That is exactly why, especially remote teams or distributed teams, we want to bring our team together because we want to create connection. How do I track that? How do we actually know that we're achieving that particular results? By bringing our team together and spending all the money to make that happen, right? So there's a lot of factors that are involved in measuring that ROI. So I want to talk about, I wonder, either you guys, maybe I'm having an internet problem, like getting things in here on my chat. So I'm going to stop for a minute. I'm going to read some chats. So Jenny, we talked about the connection. Michelle, we're completely virtual. So building trust and engagement in person is crucial. Yes. So how can we connect, but also putting our brains together, take advantage of being together in person? Yes, that's awesome. And Evelyn, I'm having a retreat June 1st. Develop a department mission vision run through the 6 thinking hats to help think outside the box and focus on 23, 24 goals to tie in to the college's strategic plan. That's awesome. I love that. It creates purpose around why we're meeting, and we're going to be talking about that as we continue on in this workshop. So first, a lot of times people want to dive into what's ROI? What are we getting out of this, right? Especially the leadership team, they're always like, what are we getting out of this? What's the value add, right? What's our team going to get? And the cost versus the results, right? Well, in order to even determine what the ROI is going to be, we have to take a step back and we actually have to go, why are we hosting this event? What are our goals? What are our objectives in bringing our team together? What do we actually want to accomplish? Because a lot of times the natural answer is just bring people together and create connection. Well, there's so much more that goes into that than just bringing people together and hope that it all works out, right? So we want to start with identifying our goals and objectives before we start measuring what our ROI is and what that looks like post the event. So this is from my experience, getting the decision makers all in one room. I don't know if you're already doing that. If you're not already doing that, you want to make sure you make this a priority. Getting all of the decision makers in the room or in the Zoom room first before you ever start planning is going to help you navigate priorities before things start to take shape, right? That's really important. And sometimes as planners or as the person delegated to plan this next team retreat, we're like, well, this is my task. I'm going to do this job. I'm going to put everything together. I'm going to put details together. And then guess what happens? You have half of the planning done. And then you take it to the leadership team and they go, yeah, we don't like that. We want to add this, blah, blah, blah. And now they have opinions. So we're trying to avoid that because that becomes a really inefficient strategy. Now, what's important here too is to discuss what's important to everyone. I don't want to say what's most important to the CEO, but they are an important person within the company. And so understanding what's important to them is really going to help transform what your retreat looks like. And that when you get through the retreat and now you're in post retreat, the leadership team is behind you and now they know what we're tracking. They go, I was the one putting input in here and now you planned it. And now we're actually seeing these results. And you're starting from the very, very beginning, getting buy-in, and that helps the planning process move a whole lot faster. Now, a goal here is not just to say, all right, guys, tell me what you want this retreat to look like. Ask questions. Now, my next slide has a bunch of questions, so you can steal these questions. But ask a lot of questions, take notes, listen to what they're saying, because sometimes what they're saying is a little bit different than hosting activities or a team building event, right? They might be a little bit more specific when you start talking to them and asking them questions to really pull out what it is they're looking for by bringing your team together. Okay, so the other thing that's really important in this meeting is to define what it is that you need from that team. Now, sometimes you're going to have your C-suite and then you're going to have managers or head of departments, right? And these people are going to be maybe leading team sessions, running things during the events. That is going to be whatever, different exercises about whatever their department needs or what they're working on. What's important here is to define your expectations and your deadlines. This can't be an open-ended, like, hey, the retreat's in 3 months, you're running a session, so be ready. That's very vague. You actually need, as the person facilitating this event, you actually need to know exactly what it is they need. How much space do they need? Do they need any supplies? Sticky notes is a really popular thing right now, sticky notes and Sharpies, right? So how much of that stuff are you going to need? Because if they decide when they get there that they need it, no, you're out running around and like having to go to the Walmart and grab things, right? That's not very efficient use of your time. And we want the experience to be nice and seamless so that the managers have exactly what they need. And if they need something else, like they're aware that there's a deadline, right? So we also want to know how they're communicating to their teams. It's really important that the managers know when the deadlines are and also communicate to their teams of maybe things they need to be thinking about, maybe topics of discussion. These are all really important things, and you want to know and set these expectations up front with your managers and your C-suite so that you can use that information and make sure that your team is getting all of the information that they need. All right. So once you get these people in the room, we want to discuss the importance of having clear goals for your team retreat. This is going to be really useful because when you set and define clear goals now, every decision you make about your team retreat is in alignment. Does that make sense? So we want to talk about what the purpose of bringing your team together. And in my notes here, it seems like an obvious, like, let's bring people together and connect, right? But sometimes there's more than that going on. And so we need to make sure that we understand the purpose. Maybe the C-suite or your manager say, there's a disconnect between our product and our marketing, and we need to solve this, right? That's a really specific task and goal. And so we're going to create connections that actually bring those two things together so that can be a desired outcome. We want to know what the team current challenges are. Is your team feeling a little bit like disjointed? Are they disconnected? What's their energy like? Are they feeling burnt out? Are they having a hard time getting work done, being efficient? Are they having a hard time being creative? Do you feel like maybe 2 months ago this thing was happening and now it's not? We want to get to the bottom of this. Maybe there's something going on in the team culturally or personally that this bringing people together is going to actually heal those connections. So having a team retreat, there's lots of different reasons why you're hosting the team retreat and a lot of benefits that come out of it. So I'm going to run through these different ideas around what the team retreat can bring to your team. Now, when you talk about improved team dynamics, this is a really important one. If you have a brand new team, or if you have a young team, maybe you're a startup, maybe you're just getting going and you're finally like at a capacity where you're like, I've got 20 people and I really need to bring them together because we need to learn more about each other, how we work, how we operate, how we think. This is going to be able to bring them together and create more cohesion with your team members. Increase productivity. This could be from a team of 10 plus years working together, or a company that's been around for a long time, but we're starting to see a lack of productivity. And so we need to bring our team together so that we can boost them up, get them excited again, start working and refocusing their vision on what the company goals and objectives are. And sometimes a break from the day to day is a really great way to engage with them. Enhance creativity and innovation. This feels like something that isn't always a high priority, but it really is. So when your team is creative and working from a space of innovation, products begin to develop and take on in a different way. So if you start to feel like this lack of creativity, or maybe your team's feeling burnt out, we want to re-engage that creativity. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more about what that actually looks like when we get into the actual retreat. Of course, higher employee engagement and satisfaction. If you're starting to feel like your team is down, burnt out, they need a boost of excitement, they want to be re-energized and feel connected to the team, this is going to happen when you bring your teams together if you need higher employee engagement and satisfaction. This is a really big one. Better alignment with organizational goals. I hear a lot of times in the virtual space with remote teams that the team members don't feel connected to the ultimate goals and mission of the company. They don't feel as present, they don't feel as involved, they don't really feel like they're part of the decision-making process. And so when you bring your team together, it gives you a really great opportunity to make sure that your goals and vision are aligned with your team, so that you're not just creating this in your manager's meeting, but it's trickling down into the participation of every person on your team. Do any of these metrics sound like what you're looking for? If there's like one of these that you're like, my team needs that right now, or this is what we're focusing on for our next retreat, let me know. What do you need right now? Or what are you thinking about bringing your team together to accomplish? I've already heard connection, connecting with the mission, taking advantage of being together in person, trust building, engagements. All of these are really important qualities. So yeah, if one of these resonate with you, let me know in the chat. I'm curious what you guys, where your head's at, what you're thinking, how you're trying to engage your team more. All right. Now, we want to connect the dots between what our goals and objectives are and how planning actually gets us there. So how you plan and organize your team retreats totally affects the outcome of your ROI. So a lot of times people get started in the planning process and they think about all the fun pieces, all the travel, all like the activities we're going to be doing and the food we're going to be eating. And so like there's all these really fun things. But the problem with starting right there is that you're actually starting in the middle. That's not the beginning. And so when we're setting our goals and objectives up front and talking to our leadership team about what it is we're trying to accomplish, what happens is now when you start planning, then you're making decisions based on those goals. So when you make decisions, sometimes you're going to be like, we have 5 different options. And so then that decision fatigue, I guess, like you're like, I don't know what to do, right? Well, now it becomes a little bit easier. Which one of those 5 options actually gets us to the goals we're trying to accomplish, right? So now you're putting everything through this filter of, does it align with our goals? Something I've seen is, especially if you're a team working on the team retreat, or you have a lot of different buy-in from different people, there's always ideas, there's always brainstorming, there's always like kind of a lot of cooks in the kitchen, right? And so what happens is that now we can ask our team and say, which one of these goals is in alignment with our mission or and our goals and objectives of having the team retreat? Now it becomes a little bit more obvious about what we should do and how we should move forward. This applies to picking a venue, perhaps. Which venue is going to help support our goals and objectives? Okay, so we want to organize for success. We want to make decisions for success. Okay, we want to spend less time navigating all of these things or vetting all of these ideas and questions because it's very time consuming. I'm sure many of you who have gone through this process, you understand what this feels like, where you're just like, oh my goodness, this is taking all the time in the world, right? So we want to be able to spend less time, be more efficient, and make sure that our planning decisions meet the goals at the end of the day. Okay. We also want to organize for connections and relationship building. Now, a lot of times people feel like um, this kind of happens naturally on their own. It does not. All of these things are planned. We're going to keep talking about that idea. But I want you to get really, really clear about your goals so that every decision you make is in alignment with the desired outcome for your team. This is that first strategic piece of making sure that team retreats have the ROI payoff that you're looking for. And I will be very, very honest, most people don't spend time doing this. So this is, if you aren't doing this, definitely start incorporating this into your process so that when you get to the fun stuff of planning the details, planning the activities, planning all the on-site stuff, you feel really confident that you know exactly what you're going after and how you're going to get there. Yes, LJ, it is super important. All right. Okay, so we want to plan with a clear outcome in mind. So you've now set your clear goals and objectives. Now comes time to design that retreat program that includes all the fun stuff. Okay, so your venue, your activities, your sessions, meetings and discussions that are happening. And we could go on all day about this actual aspect of it. And Jen, why don't you pop in the chat? I actually have a new resource coming out, and I'm putting in all of those details, like all the planning details, next month. It's going to release next month. It's all free. But if you are into like the actual details planning of retreat stuff, I'm giving all of my resources out for free. So make sure to get on that wait list, and you'll get that first. Okay, we were just talking about spontaneous relationships, and engagement doesn't just happen on its own. This is a really big kind of like, oh, what's the word? Like misnomer. A lot of times people are like, oh, we just want to have so much free time and then like create a space for people to just naturally connect. It literally doesn't happen that way. The only time it happens that way is maybe if your team is like less than 20 people, that those natural sync ups and connections just kind of like happen. Anything past that, you start to get into 25 plus people, you actually have to plan for this. Now, here's a couple of reasons why it's really important. When you start growing your team, you're going to start to get a mix of personalities. I'm just going to go with, you've got the extroverts and then you've got the introverts. Extroverts, I'm included in the extroverts. I will have all the spontaneous, natural connections as possible. I'm that person. You don't have to tell me what to do. I'm always connecting with people, talking to people. Our introvert friends don't operate that way. And so if there's not like a scheduled time to meet or provided to have those natural conversations and opportunities, we have to plan for that. So something we started doing is we started hosting happy hours before dinner, because we found that the natural extroverts, they were already hanging out before dinner, but the introverts, they had retreated to their room. They wanted quiet time. They were reading. They were doing other like recharge activities for themselves. And so until I specified that there was actually something happening that they needed to be at, they wouldn't show up. And so that actually really helped bring people together. And then when we went to dinner, they were already kind of warmed up and ready to go. And then they had a really pleasant dinner. And so that was just something that we started doing to kind of blend our introverted and extroverted friends together and make sure that it was essentially an equal opportunity when we moved into dinner. So that leads me into like, how much time do you spend on your events? So this also depends on exactly what your goals are. Some of our clients are like, honestly, work's great. We need to connect. And so this is a little bit more about relationship building rather than getting work done. I have another client that's like, no, we're having like a hackathon and we've got this new product going out and I need the team to be together and I need a whole lot of internet speed. And so just shove us in a room and let us work. Right. So everybody's got a different level of what they're trying to accomplish. So this isn't a hard, fast rule, but this is kind of my starting point rule, is spending about 30 to 40% of your time in co-working, and then 30% team building, 30% in activities or downtime. I personally love to structure my agenda so that there's always structure, even if that means structured downtime. That means from this time to this time, it's free time. That means you can do whatever you want. You can go for a walk. You can sit in your room. You can go to the pool, whatever. Outlining all of that specifically just really helps people really understand what it is and not have any sort of missed expectations. Now, if your goal is increased creativity and innovation, what would you plan for? Where would you go? So this is a really great question to ask because now goes, well, what's our goal? Our goal is increased creativity and innovation. So are we going to go to the Hilton in a big city? That doesn't sound very creative. We're going to be in a ballroom. It's like boring food, not super exciting. But if this was our goal and we did this, how does that change things for your team and actually the outcome of getting to your retreat goals? If you want increased creativity and innovation, take them to summer camp made for big kids, made for adults, made for professionals. You know, it's a luxury camping experience at a kids camp, or used to be a kids camp. So it brings back like that playful spirit, kind of puts them back in the mindset of being a kid again, right? And so we create very specific team building activities to spark that creativity, that imagination. So in this example here, the team is building cardboard boats so that they can have a race in the lake. And whoever's boat lasts to the end wins. And so it's just a really creative play on team building, working together, being creative, and laughing. That is huge. We also did a shelter building activity out in the middle of the woods, and they only were given very few supplies, and they had to work together as a team, build a shelter. They also had to come up with a story about why they were there, what they built, and what happened to them. Why did they end up in the forest in a shelter, a makeshift shelter? So what this experience does is, one, we've made a decision based on our goals about where we're going to meet and what kind of experience we're looking for. The next thing that happens is when we give them these creative experiences, they go back to their working sessions with a new kind of like perspective, a new outlet for creativity. And it's like you're getting that like that childhood creativity back again. And now they're funneling it into the company and into their teams. So it's a really productive use of your time and energy. Now, another thing we want to be doing to be more productive and in our planning process to help meet our goals is to make sure that we streamline and automate as much as possible. We don't want to be recreating the wheel every time we have a retreat. So if you're planning for the very first time, it's probably going to take you a little bit longer than it will by the time you're into your third retreat. So I'm curious what systems you're already using for organizing your team retreats. What have you found that works for you? What's working really well? What's not working really well? And then I'd love to know if there's something you're like, I wish that this existed. This would help me, right? So all of these things is like really trying to narrow in on how you're currently doing something. Is there something in that process that you can automate and make it a little bit more streamlined? Can you copy paste rather than creating a whole new process or system? So the less time that you have to spend on this planning stuff, the details of everything, and the kind of like that time suck, the more time that you have to be doing your regular job. And unless you're doing this as the job, you probably know what I'm talking about. If you're an HR professional, a people ops operation, and you're tasked with also planning your team retreat, when retreat time comes around, you're like, oh my goodness, there's so much going on and so much to do. And I have to contact all these people and make sure this happens and that happens. So creating better systems. Again, our retreat playbook is going to be a really great resource for this. So if this is something you're interested, make sure you can join that wait list. All right, so now we're going to move into planning the pre-planning, what happens during the retreat. Thanks, LJ. Also, we'll be sending out a replay of this so you can finish watching at home or at a different time. We want to talk about what happens during the retreat and post-event communication. All of this is super important to making sure that it connects with all of your goals that you set at the beginning of your retreat time. Okay, so communicating all your dates and details as far as in advance as possible. Now, you might be like, oh my goodness, I just set my date and we're leaving in 2 weeks or 2 months or something like that. I know that a lot of times when it comes to the planning, the pre-planning side of things, we feel like we're just in a last minute situation. And so we're just kind of like, I just got done with the last retreat and I want to have a break, but now I'm stuck doing the next retreat and it's in 6 months. So if you're one of those companies that are planning twice annually, or maybe 3 or 4 times annually, so you're like 4 times like every quarter, this starts to get a little bit like, if you're just working one at a time, it gets a little bit hectic, right? So we want to start thinking about, how can I plan all of next year all at once? What are my dates? Where are my locations? What are we trying to accomplish by having all of these different retreat experiences? And what do I need to happen on site? So whether that's just outlining dates and as far in advance as possible, and then figuring out like where a little bit later, that's okay too. But our goal is to communicate as far in advance as possible. And this allows your team to really figure out their schedule, their family schedule, what it is they need to make work in order for them to be gone for however long they're going to be gone. I like to survey the teams before and after, because I want to make sure that what we're saying beforehand and what's happening afterwards, they feel connected to, and they feel like they're being listened to and heard. I have some teams that don't do this because they're like, oh, we don't want to like try to make all of the dreams come true or all of the requests come true, and so it feels overwhelming. Um, I'm a little bit mixed on that perspective, because I like to do it before and after. And so my little tidbit here is, don't hold yourself to that. You don't have to do everything that someone's asking for, or maybe they're giving you suggestions that you're like, that's just unrealistic. That's okay. That's not what I'm saying. But it is nice to kind of get some feedback from the team to make sure that we're creating experiences for them as well as the company. So the other thing that I really like to do on the pre-side of planning is getting people jazzed up and excited. We have a team retreat coming up in a few months, and we're going to France. And so it's really exciting. And so, we're posting in funny stories about that we find on YouTube about like croissant reviews happening during a riot in Paris. Like, it's just really funny. And so, throwing in videos that you're just like, ah, or getting people excited by posting a video about the destination or maybe the property, fun memes. And if you use Slack to communicate with your team, you can put in a Slack bot, and it's a countdown timer to the retreat. So every like whatever day you set it to, maybe every Monday, it's like, oh, we've got 31 days to retreat. It just gets people excited and like engaged and getting ready to join the retreat. Um, yes, and then of course, like pre-planning, just getting involved with letting people choose their own adventure as much as possible. So if you have an activity day or something like that, that we're just giving the option to select which ones they want to participate in. Just some examples. Maybe they want to go whale watching. Maybe they want to go on a sunset cruise. Maybe they want to go ATVing, right? One of my rule of thumbs around activities is to have a quiet activity, an active activity, and a thinking activity. And then my fourth is usually like optional, like hang out by yourself or hang out on the property kind of day. So the reason I like to do that is just to fit everybody's unique like style, their own personalities. Sometimes during a retreat, people are very tired because you've been working on a lot of things, and so the downtime might be really nice for them. But also, some people are really excited to go do the local adventure. So, yeah, active, quiet, thinking, and optional hangout. So during the retreat, these are some things that I really like to incorporate during the actual on-site time, because this also connects back to your original goals and objectives. How you structure this time is actually going to really help solidify your ROI. So, of course, this seems simple, but spending time together, what does that look like? We want to celebrate accomplishments, create special moments and memories, eat together as much as possible. That's a big one. Incorporate as many surprise and delight moments as you can. This is something that we love to incorporate into our agendas and schedules. And video and photograph everything as much as possible. Now, these are just some examples of spending time together. Create ways for people to be playful. So we have a team building activity going on in the sand, building sand castles, and this is just a really unique way to get people interactive. Now, this is also a great way to assign people together that don't normally work together on a day-to-day basis, especially for your remote teams. There's some departments that just don't really communicate all the time. And so being strategic about putting this group of people and this group of people together, and making sure that everyone's kind of a well-rounded group as you get into team building activities. So again, just making space for people to hang out, but it needs to be structured. You have to identify it. This picture here in the middle is a happy hour time. And people just trickled in and had an hour to hang out, mingle. We had some music playing in the background. And it's just a really nice, enjoyable time, but it's low key. It's grab a drink, hang out. There's nothing structured here, but the structure is in the agenda. And of course, we love having pool parties, beach parties, all of those things, for more signature experiences during the week. Something that I see a lot of teams not doing is creating celebratory moments around big accomplishments. For this client, it was their 10-year anniversary. And so they wanted to create a special gathering place so that they could share stories, celebrate, and come together. And so we were able to create a special experience for them. But being mindful about what's coming up. Maybe you hit sales goals, maybe you hit a big mark that year in some kind of metric that you guys are tracking in your company. Spend time celebrating that. People work really hard and they want to be celebrated. Create special memories. Just bring the teams together. It's one thing to just have an activity, but then when you're creating like weird, funny experiences, like this panoramic picture is like a 15-minute experience for people that they're like, this is dumb. Why are we doing this? And then you get them to do it and they're like, this is so crazy, right? And then you get this really cool picture that the team thinks is really fun and exciting. And now they're sharing it with other people and they remember that a little bit more of like, we did this funny, picture moment on a boat with very like no space, right? So just creating those memories together, eating together as much as possible. I suggest every meal. I realize that's not always possible. And sometimes there's a specific meal during the day or in the evening that you're like, we just want to do like a dine around. We want to let our team go out for dinner on their own, maybe 2 nights of the 4 or 5 that were there. And we do like a dining experience before, middle, after, or ends, something like that. That's okay too, but I think as long as you're focused on having a lot of your meals together, this gives people an opportunity to sit with someone different every meal time. Something that could be really unique, especially this is really helpful for introverts as well, is having name cards at dinner or at meals, because then people have to sit with new people. And sometimes introverts are like, oh, I don't want to sit at that table. There's already 4 or 5 people. So then they start their own table. And it's usually like a collection of all the introverts. So this kind of gets people out of their shell and talking about getting to talk to new people. So this is a great use of mealtime. I love surprise and delight moments. Anytime you can have a welcome drink or unexpected entertainment or something like that, do it. It doesn't have to cost a lot and it can be super creative. My guy here on the left, with the tower of goblets, that didn't cost us anything. Called Sexy Coffee. If you've never heard of Sexy Coffee, anytime you see it, order it. It's really fun and exciting. He actually lights this whole tower on fire. It's a great spectacle. But I noticed this on a site visit that they had a cart for Sexy Coffee. And normally at the resort, you'd probably, pay him $20 or whatever. Maybe not $20, but some money, a tip of some kind, and they'll do this. And so we were able to arrange and make sure that we had Sexy Coffee on display, and just people thought it was really fun and interesting during dinner. So it doesn't have to cost a lot. Okay, so we want to get into the post-event essentials. We want to survey the team about their experience. But when you create these surveys, use questions that relate back to the ROI. So if your ROI was, did you, to create, bring more creativity and innovation, ask them questions around that. Do you feel more creative? Do you feel more connected to the mission? Do you feel like, ask how they're feeling, and maybe even getting some more examples from them, giving them a place to share their feelings, thoughts, and emotions. But I want to know, did they feel more connected to the mission of the company because now you did a state of the company and they might have felt confused before the retreat and now they're like, I know exactly what we're doing, right? We want to know these things. We want to start to gauge all of those goals and objectives through this event survey. Do they feel like they grew closer to the people they don't work with on a day-to-day basis? Did they feel or like they learned something new? Did you have a motivational speaker? Did you do professional development? Do they feel like the company's investing in them and their growth and where they want to go in the company? So I want you to take, inventory of all the goals and objectives that you started from the very beginning. And then as you've gone through the planning process, did you filter all of those decisions about what the actual retreat looked like, from your meetings to your activities to the downtime, how you structured the event? Does it all connect back to those goals and objectives? And when we send the survey, we start to know, do we make the right choices? Do we need to adjust? Right? So if you're not doing a post-event debrief, this would be a really great component to then re-meet with that leadership team and getting like what went right, what went wrong, what was horrible, what was amazing. And as you start to build out your retreat programs, and now you can kind of like really meld it to make sure that it's working for your organization and your culture, by asking all of these questions and vetting them against and filtering them against your original goals and objectives. Hopefully that makes sense as far as like how we think about structuring our events based on goals and objectives and how we measure our ROI at the end. That is how we do it. That's how we work with our clients about this. And then in your post-event communication, make sure to announce the next dates and any information about your next retreat. This is just so helpful for your team members. They will appreciate it 100% if we can start thinking ahead and getting things out as fast as possible. So, phew, we made it in 45 minutes. So I know there's some of you here online, but I would love to go through any questions you have. Maybe you have a specific example of something that you're literally in the middle of going like, I'm in the middle of planning. Like, what do you think about this? I'm happy to answer any questions about your current retreat, maybe past retreat experiences where you're like, this didn't go very well. How do we make this better for the next time? Let me know, pop it in the chat. I'm happy to answer any of your questions. Again, Jen's on the line right now. If you have any questions for her, if you're interested in connecting about finding your next retreat destination, we're happy to chat with you. Again, it's totally free. Our services don't cost anything. All of our teaching and education, totally free. But we would love to connect with you further. I will be sending out the recording for this in a post-event email. But yes, please connect with Jen and I. We're all on LinkedIn. Our emails are here, and you can also visit us at sonaevents.net. Yes, Jen, thanks for hopping in there and adding some of our links and your contact and information. But yeah, if you are still on the line and you have any questions, I've got 10 minutes, so take it or leave it. But I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you have any thoughts about the workshop today, I'm just happy to have that conversation as we navigate having more efficient team retreats. Thanks, Felicia. Appreciate you being here. And Dan and Evelyn.
Hi, Danielle. This is Dan.
Hey, hi, Dan.
Just tune in, listen,
Let's
watch
do
it, take
it.
notes. I have two wildly different questions.
Great. Give me the first one.
All right, the boring one first. So
Okay.
I work with some risk-averse organizations, especially some super corporate ones that have never done retreats, or if they've done retreats, they've been the most kind of bland events. And so mitigating risk or helping people kind of understand the risks for an offsite is, I spend way too much time talking about it. So I'm curious, how do you approach things like insurance from a legal perspective? And then like you invite maybe some younger professional people to an event that has happy hours. How do you kind of set norms to mitigate, behavioral risks?
Yes. So the first one on insurance, couple of things. My clients get $1 million liability insurance, and there's very specific insurance around events. So say you're having, and it also changes based on if you're US based or international. I don't know the specifics of that, but I can do a little research, and if you're interested, I can connect with you offline. Also working with companies like mine, we also carry insurance. So if the company has insurance, we have insurance. We only work with specific destinations or
Mhm.
hotels that also carry the kind of insurance that we're looking for. So, I mean, we're talking about like somebody fell and broke their leg, right? We want
Yeah.
to make sure
Yeah.
that all of that's covered. So yeah, making sure that everyone involved has insurance, and then of course, like adding everybody to the insurance policy. So that's how we kind of navigate that. As far as like behavioral and personnel,
Mhm.
we write out a very, very clear document about what a work event is. And while it seems silly to tell people to manage their drinking, you have to remind them. And it seems so silly because we don't want to have to remind people to manage their drinking. And yes, there's been some incidences.
Mhm.
Couple of things that I've done around that with drinking specifically is like happy hour is hosted and maybe like beer and wine during dinner. And then depending on the property, everything outside of that, they have to pay for on their own. So we're not a free flowing cash bar like at a wedding.
Mhm.
I've had people do that and then they go, how do we keep people from drinking? And I'm like, stop doing that. Like don't don't have an open bar, right? Or don't just go to like the whatever wine, etc., and buy all the booze and like have it open, right? We actually have to like think about how to manage that. So sometimes depending on the company, we write out different expectations like, hey, we realize that you might want to drink like after your or your last meeting, feel free to grab a
Mhm.
beer, but
Mhm.
like this is a work event. We're here with our teammates. We want to be respectful of ourselves and others. And so
Okay.
we
Okay.
actually just have team meetings and we say that to them.
Yeah, you have the safety lecture and most people follow along.
Yeah, most people do. It's not perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so that was that one side of the question.
Okay.
The other side of the question is that with all these, remote teams and fully distributed teams, sometimes the in-person offsite is a non-starter. So how have you either organized or have you known other organizers who did things like virtual offsites, and kind of how to use that as a stepping stone to get them to an in-person retreat?
Yeah, that's a great question. So during COVID, we actually hosted a ton of virtual retreats. so, so like we had a 3 day, we did it about quarterly. We had a 3 day virtual retreat. And so again, it was all structured and scheduled throughout the day. Now it doesn't have to be 3 days; it could totally just be a one day. But there was all team sessions, then there was like individual team meeting sessions, and there was cross team sessions, and then we had the fun activities, and everybody had to choose their activity. It was things from like Airbnb was like my lifesaver during COVID for activities because we could actually access like global activities. And so we did like a Japanese whiskey tasting
Ooh.
with an actual person, like an expert in Japan. And he was up at like 3 a.m. teaching, like and doing this whole workshop with our team. When and the team was like in the US, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, like they were all over. It was just a really fun and funny experience. We did dance classes, we did painting classes, we did CrossFit classes, yoga classes, like we did all types of events. Our team actually created even some virtual event um, game shows. And so we
Mhm.
have a studio that we work with. And so we created something called Dueling DJs. And so we actually paired teams together in the smaller teams and they like battled out who had the best songs. And it was
Uh-huh.
very interactive and things like that. So all of those things can be a stepping stone into getting your remote companies to get interested or excited about having a team retreat. And if you do virtual well, then it's like, yeah, we can meet in person and we're going to actually start prioritizing putting a budget together. That's been my experience.
Okay, cool. No, I like that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate that. Anyone else online have any questions specifically about what you're going through or anything going on? You can raise your hand. You can do a Dan did, just unmute. We can chat. That's great. Dan, Dan, I appreciate you just unmuting yourself too, because those are hard questions to pop in the chat.
Yeah, and it's a small group here. I'm okay, shouting out. Like I'm nothing to be ashamed of.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate everybody's time today. I wanted to get this done in an hour, and we are like 7 minutes shy of hitting that mark. So yay us. Hey, if you have any questions, any thoughts, anything you want to shout out, feel free to just email us. We're here to help you guys have better team retreats, and we are happy to help you in any way possible. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you all, and yeah. we'll stay connected on LinkedIn. So have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.